Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We've got 0900 if my timepiece is correct. I'm Buck Duncan. I'm president of Midshore Community Foundation. Welcome. This will be interesting, I can assure you. I'll tell you a little bit about Fred, and he's also brought with him Scott Sears. That's his right-hand gentleman that he works with. Both of those gentlemen work with Eastern Utilities, and I had the pleasure to work with both of them for the past 10 or 12 years when I did some work for Eastern Utilities also. Fred is the Chief Information Officer. Scott is his right-hand gentleman. And Fred has been in the IT business probably some 35 or so years now. Scott, not so long, but he certainly is seasoned in that business also. And a little bit about Fred, and then I'll go ahead and turn it over to those two gentlemen. But Fred's background is extremely interesting. He not only does Eastern Utilities, that's his real job, but there are a lot of things that go on with that. Um, he served as the Chief Information Officer for an international manufacturing company, a high-tech electronics company. His background is very interesting in his roles in Eastern Utility. He deals with some state agencies, some federal agencies, and there are some agencies internationally that he deals with also. So he has a broad range of information in both AI and cybersecurity, which is near and dear to everybody's heart nowadays, or it should be, certainly. A little bit about Fred's education, BS in math, BS in computer science. That's from Villanova University. Master of Science in Computer Science, and that's from Johns Hopkins. And he has an MBA from Loyola. So, gentlemen, I will turn it over to you with one other thing for the audience. Stay tuned, 624. We're going to have Tom Ahern come back. That too will be a webinar, and he's going to help us inspire giving. So, both Fred and Scott, up to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. All right, tell me when you guys can see. Are we good, Liz?
Yep, we can see it.
All right. Well, thank you, Buck. I really appreciate that and everything that Midshore Community Foundation does for the community in general and for all the time that you put in with Midshore Community Foundation and Eastern Utilities. So thank you, Buck. There are just a couple of things I wanted to add. With our position at Eastern Utilities, we have access to the national labs across the United States, and we get monthly updates from the national labs. We have a monthly presentation that PhDs in AI at the different national labs will give us to keep us up to date from a cybersecurity standpoint and generic AI. In addition to that, we get briefings, regular briefings from the FBI. So I can give you some information about AI in general, but I can also do it as far as how it applies to the critical infrastructure within the United States. So the theme of today's talk is AI demystified. So we're not going to get extremely technical. We will have question and answers at the end, and we'll also have contact information so that if you wanted more information, you can contact us, either myself or Scott. And speaking of Scott, Scott Sears has worked with me. We've worked together for 27 years, and he is my AI ninja. He's the manager of software development at Eastern Utilities. And one of the things I really wanted to show everybody is he amazes me. In 2023, this was 3 years ago, Scott created, using complete AI, he created a Christmas present for a friend of his. He created a story and a coloring book, and it is on Amazon. You can buy it. And it took him 3 days to create it. And I think it's amazing. And he's going to do some demos toward the end. I'm going to talk theory, and he's going to handle and show you. I always love at the end to be able to show you some actual work done in AI. So, but that's his Christmas book. So Eastern Utilities, I think Buck already said, this is what makes us unique in the United States.
Your microphone is cutting out, Fred.
It's cutting out. Can everybody hear me now?
I can hear you fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was fine all the way through.
Okay. So Eastern Utilities is very unique. There are 2008 public utilities, municipal utilities in the United States. There's three types of utilities: investor-owned, which are the bigger Eastern utilities, which are publicly traded. You have co-ops, which are in the rural areas, and then you have public utilities. The biggest public utility in the U.S. is Los Angeles. So some big cities have public utilities. Easton is in the 75th percentile, which means 75% of public utilities in the United States are smaller than Easton. And also, we are what's called a microgrid, and there aren't very many microgrids. All of the Caribbean islands are microgrids because they can't attach to the major grid. They have to generate and disconnect from the rest of the world. We have the ability in Easton, because we can generate our own load, that if something happens to the Eastern grid, we can disconnect and create power, which puts us, because of the fact that we have natural gas, electric, water and wastewater, and telecom, it makes us very unique in the U.S. for national labs, for federal agencies, and for the state of Maryland to work with us to do a lot of testing for cybersecurity, because we have everything in one place. And so it's very interesting, and we do participate nationally and internationally in cybersecurity discussions. So today, what we want to do is explain the history of AI. We'll touch on that a little bit. What is AI really? How does it work? We're going to explain the different types of AI and how it affects data centers in the power grid, cybersecurity. We're going to make recommendations and give you some takeaways, and then we're going to do a demo, all in an hour, which means I got to go fast. So the first thing I want to do was explain that AI really started, the term was coined in 1956. And the first perceptron, which was and I'll get into this in a little bit, but a perceptron was a mathematical construct that allowed, or that was trying to mimic the neural network system in your brain. And it did it with linear algebra and a matrix. And people have used it to try to distinguish pictures between dogs and cats, but it's the very beginning, and it's a very, very basic version of a neural network. And in the 50s and 60s, you can see the other things that we were doing, just to give you some time base. In 1970s and 80s, when I was in school, and Buck was talking about the fact that I went to Johns Hopkins to get my master's degree in computer science. The medical industry was the only industry that was using AI. Finance was starting to get into it, but they were using what were called expert systems. And it wasn't a neural net. It was basically a hard-coded set of rules that you could ask questions and it would give you answers. Also, video games really, started out, and I really give a lot of credit when it comes to where we are in AI today. Video games, and if we go to the 90s and you see natural language processing, that's really the beginnings of where we are today in AI. And I'll explain why video games are so important. Image processing also in the 80s, that was basically, and I'll tell you something, quick little story. It's kind of funny, but I worked for a company that had an image processing company. It was Gould Electronics and Dianza Image Processing Company they owned, which was in Innsbruck, Florida. And this was a big monster computer, and it took images, and you could do math on images. And the big accomplishment I made was I subtracted 2 images to look for motion. That was all we could do back then, because we didn't have the computing power to do much more than that. But going into the 90s, that's when NVIDIA was created. NVIDIA started as a graphics company. They made graphics cards for computers, specifically for gaming and high resolution graphics. So where NVIDIA is now, that's the connection. In the 2000s, obviously, the iPhone came about, which changed everything. Gaming exploded at that point. The first dabbling in, using AI and neural networks, the Roomba vacuum tried to figure out where it had vacuumed and where it hadn't. And the Mars rover had to navigate terrain that was very difficult, and they were using AI to manage the navigation on the Mars rover. In the 2000s, it really commercialized. We have the Alexa, Watson, Siri. OpenAI came about in the mid to late 2010s, and IBM Watson wins Jeopardy. And, so they were always trying to compete AI versus humans. That was like the theme for about 30 years. And then in 2020, it just exploded. And Scott's going to talk a little bit about hallucinations.
Yeah, with hallucinations, it's always interesting for those people who have used AI. Sometimes well, most of the time it's incredibly amazing. And then every once in a while, it seems like you're wondering why you're actually using this technology. It'll come up with some sort of answer that's somewhat bizarre. And Fred's going to go into more of this in more detail, but basically AI is always just trying to predict that next word, and it's trying to please you. It's trying to give you an answer that you think you would like. And so in that case, because whether it's behind in certain data or it just sees a pattern that's very strong for it, but it's a pattern that's wrong, it winds up saying something that's incorrect. And that's basically a lot of hallucinations. And we can always talk later as to how to avoid those type of hallucinations. And that's getting AI to cite its work, just like you would with your friend.
Thanks, Scott. All right, here's a brand new product that, oops, hold on, technical difficulty.
The iPad is getting calculator app, which now works with the Apple Pencil and will automatically solve your handwritten equations. Be careful though, if you divide by 0, it'll start a fire.
Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
All right.
That's perfect.
There's all these jokes about artificial intelligence, and the reason why I like this one is it shows you AI trying to do arithmetic. And AI doesn't know how to do arithmetic. AI looks at, let's say it was, 30 times 84, and it goes into its knowledge base and looks for anything that looks like that, and then looks for an answer attached to it. It doesn't know anything, and that's the reason why I brought this up. So what is AI? It's a computer-based system that's performing tasks that we usually would associate with human intelligence. It doesn't think. It doesn't learn, it doesn't reason, it doesn't solve problems. It basically searches for things, and a neural network has to be trained. So we're using human words to describe what AI is. AI really is none of the things that we describe it as, but it does things similar to what a human would do. So that's why we give it the term intelligence, but it really is not smart. That book on the right is the book that I used when I was studying artificial intelligence back in the 80s. And Patrick Henry Winston was a professor at MIT. And I feel the reason why I brought this up is he passed away in 99, so he never got to see the fruits of all his work, which is a shame. So how does it work? It's basically math. I mean, AI, and we're not going to get into the specific details, but it's a combination of linear algebra, okay? And that's exactly how computer graphics work. They multiply matrices. That's essentially how you get things to move and rotate. It's very similar, but it uses weights and biases within this gigantic matrix and series of matrices. And each matrix is like a neuron. And the more matrices you have, the more information can be contained within that data or within that structure. So it's the calculus side, statistics, as Scott said, hallucinations. You can create answers, and that answer may not be 100% correct because all an AI system is trying to do is converge to something it thinks has a high probability of being correct. And it uses the statistics to get above a certain threshold, and it uses calculus and differentials to look for trends. So it's looking for trends to be able to predict. Predictive AI uses a lot of calculus, but it's simple calculus. It's basically derivatives. And again, computers don't think. They make predictions based on historical patterns and the data that is amassed within the matrices of the AI system. And it is, if you had to say what AI systems really are, they're really sophisticated search engines. Searching within the data that is embedded within the neural network that has been trained, quote unquote. But it'll create answers and generate them and merge them from multiple experiences. So yes, it is creating things that didn't exist before by merging different experiences or different training sessions that it's had. So integrated, there's two different types of artificial intelligence we want to talk about. One's integrated artificial intelligence. And the way that I can describe this is it's things you're already using. You just don't even know AI is embedded in them. It's embedded in almost everything. BirdFi is a system where, and I use this at home and it's amazing. It'll send me a notification. It's a bird feeder with a camera. And I don't know if any of you have this, but if you pay for the extra AI account, the enhanced AI account, it'll tell you what bird is there. So it'll say a red-bellied woodpecker, and sure enough, I see on my phone there's a red-bellied woodpecker, and it'll take like 20-second video of it sitting there eating, and it's really cool. Verkada, if we have time later, and maybe offline, I'll demo this because I want to keep this concise. But Verkada is a camera system that we're using at Eastern Utilities, and you can ask the camera to show you all videos from all your cameras that have a blue Ford pickup truck with a guy wearing a hat. And in 10 seconds, it gathers all those videos and presents them to you. It's amazing. Netflix, Amazon, you guys all know that anything you do online is being consumed and used so that they can sell you more products. The Zoom contact center, when you call a contact center, they know whether you're happy or sad. It analyzes the words because of that natural language processing I talked about. It analyzes what you're saying to them and will tell the person on the other end of the phone what your temperament is and can take actions on it. Spam filters are always learning, what is a legitimate email and what's not. Spotify, it'll create your own playlist if you'd like it to. Ring, Nest, Waze, and then MS Office is going to be part of our demo. Copilot and Gemini. Gemini is Google, and Copilot is the Microsoft AI assistant. They use OpenAI. They use the engine behind ChatGPT. And Scott is going to demo and show you some of these slides in the PowerPoint presentation were created by AI, and it's by Copilot. It's amazing. So
if you loved Microsoft's recall feature, then you'll just love Pixel Screenshots, where every screenshot you take on your phone can be analysed by an AI to make your private searches easier to search. But don't worry, because you're the only one who can take these searchable screenshots on your phone. Or at least, that's what we're telling you.
All right, well, obviously, we got a data security issue. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. Conversational AI or AI chatbots, they call it a lot of different things. And this is what people have been using a lot recently, between ChatGPT and Gemini and Copilot and Anthropic's, oh my God, not Mythos, Claude, thank you. So they're the big boys, the large language models. If you use those and use the free version, all of your information is being consumed and passed back into the neural network to train using your information for the next person that's going to use it. You have to trust, I guess you don't have to, but all of those players have paid business versions where your data is, and again, you have to trust, or there is no assurance that your information is not being passed to anyone else. But I do believe, because of the competition between them, if any of these big AI players were caught passing information across that was that was sold to you as being a lockdown large language model, I think they would have financial trouble because they would, so I do believe that they're secure, but I can't promise you that. The big issue, the reason why the big boys are the only ones that can do this is because, and this is based on an exponential relationship between a 1 and a 2-dimensional system. Your TVs, if you have a 32-inch TV versus a 55-inch TV, it's 4 times bigger. And when your matrices get bigger and bigger, there's an exponential relationship. Every time you make it bigger, and the amount of parameters that you need within an AI system are in the trillions. So this is why we need so much computer power to be able to run these. So, and the other thing is with all the data centers, these big AI companies are investing tons of money into data centers because right now they if they want to get better, they got to get bigger. So this is one situation where bigger is absolutely better. And it's not the amount of computer power that you have. It's or I'm sorry, it's not the speed of the computer. It's the amount of capacity, which is if you were looking at a company, Micron, that makes memory chips, they're going through the roof right now because AI can't consume, or AI can consume all of the chips that they can make. It's a supply and demand. There's so much demand for memory chips right now and for computers. If you computer power and microchips, if you look at Intel and AMD, they're going through the roof also. So it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and that is going to affect the power grid, and I'll talk about that in a second. So the types of generative AI that we want to break out for you, and Scott's going to talk about on the next slide, is agentive, which is basically workflow, text and prose. Everybody's been using that for, ChatGPT and what have you. You can do audio and video, and a lot of people are afraid that that's leading to hacking campaigns against senior citizens by mimicking different voices and and mimicking different facial taking a picture and creating a version of a person and adding it to video. It's coming. It's already here, but it's definitely going to get worse. Then there's images and photos that Scott's going to show you a little bit about. And then the big area for us, since we write, we are programmers and write a lot of code and develop software, coding and programming, troubleshooting and creating actual code is so much easier with generative AI. So Scott's going to touch on these are all the different brands and the different offerings, AI offerings in the different categories.
Yeah, so like about 18 months ago, it's most people here probably know about two or three of these. And then today, it's like you probably recognize many of these names. By the time I'm done talking about any of these, this list will be old and there'll be 80 new AIs that have popped out. So most everyone has maybe played or heard of the ChatGPTs. You have Claude, Gemini, of course, Google had to come into it. Facebook does have things, but their offering is more local. So Meta is in the game. Of course, you have Grok. Those are your big. I go to a chatbot and I ask questions and I get answers. And those are probably the most popular. But it's like a lot of this started off with images. So with video and audio, well, I'll actually go over to the right. Midjourney was the artist of all AI. It still is. The problem with Midjourney, it's extremely artistic. You will create a Rembrandt with Midjourney. But trying to coax it to get you exactly what you want, good luck with that. And then you have a lot of different names, and I'm not going to go through each and every one of these, but just like OpenAI has ChatGPT, it has DALL-E. This is already baked in your ChatGPT when you ask it to generate an image. It's actually fantastic, and it's fantastic for a more important reason. It can be consistent. You can basically ask it or give it a reference to something and then ask it to manipulate that image. It'll do it very well. Stable Diffusion, just like Meta, has local offerings. Stable Diffusion is more of a localized AI. And then Photoshop or Adobe brought in Firefly. And that's an actual very useful tool. Coding and dev, just like Fred said, this is where Claude, if you're into coding, Claude definitely is one of the leaders, if not the leader. And the rest of them are fine also. They all play games of one-upping each other as far as coding. And this is where Fred kind of touched upon agentive coding in the sense of Instead of just going to a chatbot asking a question to make something, you can actually go to your own computer's folder, bring up an application and say, hey, or bring up, we'll say, uh, ChatGPT's codex, and I can ask it to build me a calculator. It will build a calculator. Not that it necessarily knows how. It just has seen enough code. And this is also where Fred touched upon like your security. It's seen enough code because even as people are using it, there's the potential for training on it. If you pay for it, chances are it's probably secure, maybe. And when I say secure, it's not that anyone's stealing your information, but they could be training off of it. If it's free, you're the product. Video and audio, Runway is huge. That's to make it start off with just so as you could generate images, then everyone pushed it forward. I want to have video. So you have Runway, Kling, which is that, and it's not on the list, but Sea Dance. These are Chinese based, not to necessarily be afraid of them, but because they're Chinese based, they don't care about copyrights. So when you see Will Smith eating spaghetti, typically it's made with one of these as opposed to Runway. Hey Jen is exactly what Fred was kind of talking about. This is more of your, I want to have a virtual, I want to take an image of, it could be me, and then have it actually communicate and speak to you. It would animate me. And then using something like, say, 11 Labs, I could synthesize my speech and it would sound it almost exactly like me. So on one hand, it's great to have a spokesperson for your company or a front end to whatever you're actually trying to offer people to give that humanized feel. But at the same time, yes, anything that's good can be used for something else. And then you have processes, Zapier, N8, and this stuff gets to I want to be able to have some sort of workflow or transform data from one place to the other, but I don't want to know how to code it. I just want to be able to actually get information in a usable fashion that means something to me. And then you have a lot of the actual emerging tech. Grammarly is one where it used to just be a spell checker. It could actually do a great bang up job of making sure your grammar's correct. Now it's pushed more into if you're the person who writes a lengthy email and you're a bit wordy, you can paraphrase or you can kind of set the tone to an email for more of like an executive or keep it very friendly and natural for a general audience.
Thanks, Scott. And the one that's not up here, and we'll touch on it a little bit, is Claude Mythos. And you probably heard in the news, Anthropic and how the federal government is dealing with them right now. Project Glasswing, it's testing so well. Claude Mythos is testing so well that they're holding it off from giving it out to the public at this point. But I'm going to give you some good stories in the next minute or so after we get through the next slide. Yes.
Fred, can I just interrupt? Somebody in the chat asked if you could repeat the Chinese option you mentioned but wasn't on the list.
Oh, Sea Dance. That's the really popular one if you haven't noticed. If you catch YouTube or what have you, there's a lot of them where it's doing almost complete animations. It's really quite impressive.
Thank you.
Right.
We have a couple of other questions, but we'll save those till the end.
Okay. All right, we got another AI.
Well, this Anthropic company is worth almost $1 trillion, so I'm sure their products must be safe. All right? Hi, Claude AI. Can you help me run my business?
Sure. Going ahead and deleting your entire database.
Crap, that was fast. Well, good thing we've got our backups.
Deleting your backups too.
What?
Would you like help with your finances?
Well, there aren't any anymore.
Well, we just
Well,
we put these in here to amuse ourselves, but that actually did happen. I didn't want to scare anybody, but that did happen, and Scott can talk to that at the end if you guys are interested. But yeah, there's, and I'm going to talk about this in a bit. Lateral spread is the issue, is the biggest issue with AI as far as I'm concerned, and that is the same way that ransomware works, where it propagates across your network. Okay, most of the issues we're having with cybersecurity have to do with lateral spread or lateral traversing. And we can detect that right now with AI. And we can shut down an island, a computer that starts to do that. So there are ways around right now. I do believe that at least at this point, we will be able to control AI with AI. And so I'll get to that in a little bit, but that was the reason why we showed that little snippet, is that it's not as scary. It's really comedy as far as I'm concerned at this point, but we do have to be responsible, and that's why we have Project Glasswing and some of the other cooperative members from industry that are working together to make sure this doesn't get out of control. So the power grid and data centers, I mentioned how much infrastructure they need to be able to run these things, because it's not data like you used to store data and then search through data. That's not what's happening here. What's happening is your experiences are getting encoded in matrices, and in terms of weights and biases, and they basically are thresholds that will get multiplied together to meet a certain threshold. And when it does, they'll run it over and over again until it converges to an answer. And that's how it works. Well, the bigger is better. And the data centers that we have right now we don't have enough generation at this point to be able to support all the data centers. If the data centers are expanding exponentially, and the way a computer works, when you turn a computer on, everything within the computer is working immediately, and it consumes the same amount of energy unless you're turning on additional subcomputers within the computer, which are, and a graphics, an image processor or a graphics card is a component that has a computer on it that's within a computer. So, but when microprocessor is running, it's always running all the time. Even if it's not doing anything, it executes what's called a no-op. It just sits there and sits in a no-op loop until it's interrupted. So the more computers you have, the more power you need. And on top of it, computers generate heat. So you need air conditioning everywhere. And it's just putting a huge strain on the power grid. And in the state of Maryland, we are a net consumer in the state of Maryland. We don't generate. I was mentioning the Eastern Utilities is a microgrid. We can generate our load. Maryland can't generate its load. We buy from Pennsylvania and Virginia all the time. So and Maryland isn't even, well, actually Maryland is in the worst shape of all 50 states right now. Number 2 is Texas. Texas has its own, there's only 3 grids in the US, Texas, East and West. And we're part of the East grid, obviously. Texas has its own grid, and they're right behind Maryland as far as having issues with their grid. And everyone remembers the hurricane that occurred and all the issues they were having. No, it was a winter storm. I'm sorry. But so you have increased strain on the system. We need more generation. That's really what it comes down to. Renewable energy is nice when it's windy and when it's sunny, but we need on-demand electricity, and it's going to require other methods of being able to produce that, or we're going to have blackouts. I don't want to make everybody, everyone's working on this right now, but within a couple of years, there's going to be blackouts if we don't increase our generation. And I'm not going to say it's the data center's fault, and I'm not going to say it's AI's fault, but that's the cause. Okay, cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. We mentioned sophisticated phishing attacks and social engineering attacks through, generating. How much does it cost to create an email? Nothing. So you can create bots that just shoot out emails, which is what we've seen. And now they're looking, instead of being hand created with misspellings, now they're being created perfectly, and they can, all of the sentiment and everything in these emails can be controlled with these large language models. So a large language model is great for these type of things because it was designed to absorb the information in these giant matrices, and it's great at pattern matching. And it's also great at anomaly detection, which is where it's going to lend itself and has lent itself to cybersecurity, because we can look for things in our system that aren't supposed to happen. I was mentioning that we work with the FBI, we work with the Department of Energy, and we get regular briefings on this information. And I can tell you at this point that we are, at the time right now, we are ahead of the Chinese. And I can tell you that both kinetically and from a cyber standpoint, but they are catching up. And I think the key to all of this, as far as our security, is, as I mentioned, the anomaly detection, because if we can see that someone that's not supposed to be in our system is there, because, and I don't want to get into all the detail, but if you're in someone's system, you can't get through the firewall unless you beacon out from the inside, which is why, because something has to trigger any event. You have to, if you want to control something, you have to be able to trigger it. So they occasionally will have to, if they're in our systems, have to beacon out back to home base so that they can occasionally trigger something, or it has to be time, there has to be a time set to trigger it. So looking for those anomalies that shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't be beaconing out to a foreign country. By catching these patterns, it really helps. There's SOC systems, security operations centers all over the country. All the big companies have them. And then there's managed detection and response systems that help the rest of us that aren't big enough to have our own SOCs. They're using AI, and they're doing a great job. And I've seen it work, and I've seen it catch some of the cyber criminals by islanding a particular computer and allowing us to look at what vulnerability was exploited and then patching that vulnerability. But it's basically whack-a-mole at this point. But the better we do at detecting lateral spread anomalies and lateral traversing, the better we're going to be at stopping our foreign adversaries and just basically hackers from getting into our systems and exploiting our systems. So here are some of the partnerships, and the reason I put this slide in here is all these departments are, Project Glasswing and Anchor are and the National Cyber Directorate that was started in 2022. And that's at the executive level. They're looking over all the agencies and trying to make sure that they're all collaborating. The ISACs are really important. There's a ONG ISAC for natural gas. There's MS is for multi-state. That's for state and local governments. There's a water ISAC. There's the EISAC for electricity. There's EI ISAC for election infrastructure. The ISACs are critical because they pass the information between the federal sectors and the individual private companies. The federal government is really working, with the DOE, and there's 18 critical infrastructures that are identified, and each agency is assigned, one or more of these. The power, electricity is handled by the Department of Energy, and they are doing a great job. They really are. So I just wanted the state of Maryland is also the PSC, DOIT, the Department of IT. They're on top of it. They all have cyber SOCs, and there is a what's called a fusion center. It's west of Baltimore, and it takes in the FBI, DHS, all our federal partners, the Maryland National Guard, state police, and all of the state DOIT and the State Emergency Management Center. They all get together and pass information back and forth. So they're doing a great job, but we have to stay vigilant, and we will. So I promised that we were going to do some slides to give you guys something to take away, and then we're going to do a demo. The key selection features, there's 4 different systems that we're going to recommend that if you're going to dabble in AI, if you haven't already done this, because a lot of companies have done this, and I think it's between 40 and 50% of US companies have already done this. And that is to purchase either a business or an enterprise version of one of these 4 major AI conversational systems. But the key selection feature should be data security. They all are pretty much, this is why you don't want to use the free version. You certainly never want to pass PII or HIPAA information or anything like that. I wouldn't even put HIPAA into these systems. You really don't want to put personal information in any of these systems. They learn and they consume. Let's say, I said I wouldn't say learn, but they consume. The computing environment that you're in or your company is in, if you're with Microsoft, use Microsoft Copilot. If you're with Google, use Gemini. We would highly recommend ChatGPT if you're agnostic and if you're I think Scott will get into this a little bit in the next slide. But what your primary usage is? Are you trying to generate pros? Are you trying to do workflow analysis? Are you trying to detect issues? Are you doing cybersecurity? Depending on what you're trying to use this for, that's going to dictate which direction we would recommend that you would go. And then the price, you can see that they're all pretty much the same at this point, but you need to include training. You don't want to unleash this on a workforce that is completely untrained to use this. And then you have to have policies in place to make sure that you don't pass information that should not be given to these major AI companies, and make sure that you're using it in a responsible manner. So with that, I'm going to pass this over to Scott to do some demos. We're good on time. And with that, Scott, you can share your screen.
All right. All right, so for the most part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with Outlook. I've purposely been ignoring email for the past couple days just for you guys, just for this. And one thing if a lot of people are using Microsoft 365 that they might not have realized, you have Copilot, top right-hand corner. You can click on it. In this case, just because I want to make sure we're on time and we do as much as possible, instead of typing, I'm going to copy and paste some of the how I would interact with Outlook. In this case, I want to just summarize my unread emails and highlight any unresolved issues. So I can send that to Copilot. It's actually going to go through now, ideally, because this is paid for, this portion's supposed to be secured within your Office 365 paid subscription. But it'll start listing. Looks like I have a support ticket for Mickey. Looks like there's a couple other issues of support that I have to actually look at and tend to. There is a production application issue with something that I need to take a peek at. It looks like any sort of security we have so many different clients who we do WordPress for. So it's just a matter of like plugins that might be behind that we have to make sure that they're up to date. And then it even goes down to low priority, just showing me different things of different people doing different things, or trying to get my attention. And then largely just the key takeaways, any sort of things that should come to my attention. So that's great. But I want to go ahead and find out, and we'll go this way. Find all emails in the last 14 days where someone is waiting for me to respond to. Once again, I'll just kind of search through this. Maybe I came back from vacation. I'm just trying to catch up. And it'll go through. And maybe I should have just said 7 days. But there was a client that we do work with where, yes, they needed to have their website updated. There's another client who is going to be moving a database, and that's actually new to me. So that's actually good that I did that. So it looks like I'm going to be involved in some sort of meeting in a couple days. And then there's another client where we're doing a mass update of their billing database. And I'll be speaking to this gentleman right after this meeting. So that's not too bad. And then the last example I'd like to show you. And actually, I didn't even test this one. Based on my emails and calendar this week, what are the top 3 things I need to handle before Friday? I need to make sure Fred's happy. I need to make sure Easton's happy. I need to make sure all of our customers and clients are happy. So what do I have to make sure I get done if I've been completely absent from work or I feel somewhat disconnected? So it's basically looking through, searching. Still searching. Either I have too much to do or I have nothing to do, one or the other. We'll see what pops. And if this takes too long, I'll jump to another demonstration and we can always come back to that. That's actually my next meeting with the one gentleman I pointed out. While we let this cook,
Let it cook.
I will come back to this. So the next demonstration that I wanted to show you, I'm going to use Gemini on this one. And if anyone's ever been in a conference room and everyone draws on a whiteboard, they have their best ideas, scattered ideas everywhere. And then I don't know whether you guys are like me, you take a picture of it because you want to try to capture those notes somewhere else. Well, in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to take a screenshot of this. Now, I don't know if you guys can see this, but that writing is pretty bad. And it's a lot of writing there. I'm going to take this over to Gemini. I'm actually going to paste that picture in here. And then with this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically ask Gemini, can you capture the data from this whiteboard? Now, this is nothing special about Gemini. A lot of the other ones can do this. There's just a little bit more of a flow with Gemini that I want to show you afterwards. So what it's doing is just like you can make an image, it can actually, in a sense, read an image. And if you guys are probably more than used to like OCR, it's rolling through, trying to pull the information, but also placing all of this information in some sort of sensible, categorized list. And what kind of even gets me is this transformation in labs. That part was down here where I can almost not even read that. Where scientists using Legase, hopefully I'm pronouncing that, it actually nailed that perfectly. So it's actual like being able to recognize handwriting is spot on. But maybe I want to take this a little bit further. Maybe I went to a class or something, and I want to bring this information back. Can I make a presentation from this? So I collected a whole bunch of notes from a picture. It was able to actually discern all of those, plop them all into a list for me, and now I'm going to go ahead and see if I can't make a presentation from this. So Gemini is kind of cooking on this. And this is always fun too. Fred and I went through a lot of these presentations the other day, and of course everything was like really zippy fast. So sometimes you need to be a little bit patient. Now I think I can already open this. I'm going to let this spin a little bit more just to make sure this is done. Now while we kind of wait for that, I'll come back to this. So it looks like by Friday, I better have my act together regarding this next POIS meeting that I have.
In 12
And
minutes.
not that this is an angry calculator, but they have a place in Maryland called Savage. And so that's going to be the big thing that they're going to want to talk about. And that's actually true. So it looks like this part's done. I want to click open. And sure enough, it actually made a slide deck for me with diagrams. Now, is this perfect? Probably not, but it would be a start for me to actually go through and edit. Now, what's interesting, I had taken all of these same notes, and because I didn't want anyone to wait, I actually plopped those same notes doing this earlier into PowerPoint. Copilot went ahead and created this, which actually is really quite beautiful. That could use some work. So there's always something that you could tweak, but for the most part, it could actually really get you started, especially if you're stuck as to what template do you want to use. You're not that really keen on design, or you're just really short on time. Now, in all of these cases, you're going to see this. We're going to keep repeating ourselves. You don't just trust AI to do something. You should read through each and every one of these. You need to make sure that everything that is being translated to whatever this is, PowerPoint presentation, an email, a Word document, you want to go through it. You want to make sure that what you're stating, what you're sending out is accurate. So just because it did a bang up job recognizing text from a whiteboard and then making a presentation about it, you still want to be able to cite your sources, so on and so forth. The last demo, we'll go ahead and let's see. I want to add a
So
photo.
far, Scott, you've used ChatGPT, you've used Gemini, and used Copilot.
Yep. Now in this one is just for fun. So have a backyard, have a fire pit. I want to spruce it up. I want to do something with it. I want to transform it. So what we're going to do here is, and for the sake of time, instead of typing in, I'd like to make this more like a fire pit. Please use products. I want to go to either shop at Lowe's or Home Depot. So I want to see how best it can actually go to Lowe's or Home Depot, get products that I can actually get from the store and do something with my backyard. So I want to show me what this will look like. So it'll actually go through and it'll start creating an image. Now, ideally, we hope we get something that actually resembles this. We'll take a look and see what it looks like and see how long this actually takes.
And Scott, you've been talking about how great the graphic output is from ChatGPT lately.
So the big difference with, especially with ChatGPT or its enhancements, there's a thing where if people were trying to make consistent characters, you'll hear a lot about consistent characters where I want to have I don't know, I'm drawing a comic book, I'm drawing a cartoon or something, and I want to have the same characters again and again. And this kind of plays into that a little bit. If you notice, it's pretty dead on accurate as far as taking the actual picture, keeping it consistent even down to the chairs.
Look at the
AI
lighting. Look at the lighting on the tree. Look at the detail that it's amazing.
So now that's fine. Okay, so you wound up giving me a nice picture, but okay, so what is the shopping list for this and potential cost?
And right after this, we'll do question and answer because we're running out of time.
Well, actually, while we wait for this, if we want to start doing any sort of question and answer, this might always take a couple seconds to cook.
Sure, you want me to read one of the questions here?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So the first question is from Colleen. She wanted to know, which product do you recommend, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, or are they all being fueled by ChatGPT?
ChatGPT is fueling Microsoft and Google. Claude's on its own, but I think it's a function of what your environment is. If you're a Microsoft environment or a Google environment, and if you're neither, then, and actually if for home, ChatGPT. But here at Eastern Utilities, we're probably going Copilot.
Hey, thank you. We have another question from Christie. Is there any truth to the assumption or rumor that the data centers are not only impacting the grid, but are also impacting the speed of our local network because there's so much volume going through our local internet backbone?
There's the bandwidth is a function. Actually, there's a lot of synergies between the electric grid and the telecom grid. There's capacity. There's different size pipes. Think of it that way. Making everything travels at the speed of light. As far as through, I mean, especially when it's fiber. So there is truth to that, but I think we're in better shape when it comes to handling the capacity of the data transfer than we are with the electric grid. So we are concerned about it, but that's not as big a problem as the power grid is.
That leads us right into the next question. Speaking of the power grid, how big is the Maryland energy deficit and what percentage? How is Eastern Utilities preparing for this eventually?
That's a great question. I believe, and I could be wrong, that we import 35 to 40% of our energy. And I might be wrong. That's good. That's off my memory. What Eastern Utilities is doing is we are part of the critical infrastructure. We are attached to the Eastern grid. We generate when we're told to generate to help everyone else out. So we are looking at adding additional generation in the future. I don't have specifics on that. But we are, we're players in to help the state of Maryland out and the federal government.
Okay, and then Charles wanted to know is if you use the Chat GPT paid version, is it safer?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the free version is not safe at all. The paid version is definitely safer.
Okay.
How safe? I don't work for their company, and it's only conjecture.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple more questions, but do you want to go back to the presentation?
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Oh, sure. So we wound up getting the actual list. So basically, it wound up giving me options from Home Depot. If you guys were kind of watching at the same time, I could actually click those links showing me the fire pits that were in play. It wound up giving me suggestions with a cost structure, but in the end, it wound up, okay, this is going to run me about a grand and a half or something to spruce up my backyard. And then even giving me certain suggestions. So that's pretty nice. Plus, I get something I can actually build towards as far as, yeah, this is, and you could keep iterating with that if you needed to make any sort of changes, like, oh, I want something a little bit more, I want something else. Bless you.
Man, that's amazing, Scott. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Any other questions?
yes. So
Scott, let me share. There we go. So we can get our.
Absolutely.
All right, is it up? You see it?
yep.
Okay.
Okay,
For
so
contact information, but go ahead with the questions.
all right, we have a question from Kathleen. How much time on average does it take to teach AI?
Oh, that can be very interesting as far as like whether it's image generation with LoRa's or you're just trying to teach it, like, say you have a customer service. You have to make sure you give it a decent amount of well-structured information. So that's just your own time kind of building that. And then it depends on your hardware or the hardware you're renting to actually train. This is where a lot of energy is being burnt. I have trained certain AIs that have taken about 24 hours, and my computer was just cooking, fans blazing.
Is that what they meant, training the employees or training the AI engine?
I'm not sure. Kathleen, do you want to unmute and clarify your question?
Sure. I think it was the AI engine. I'll be honest, I've not used a lot, but I've heard that you have to really train it. And so just trying to see, like, is it really a time saver, or sometimes is it just easier to just do what you have to do? But I'm afraid of it, to be honest. I started my career out as an educator and I am very nervous. So but I've heard a lot of people say it really helps your efficiency, but you've got to teach it. But
Yes,
you
and
know,
without proper oversight, just like anything else that you've ever taught before, it's
mhm.
not always going to be right. So for a time, you almost have to kind of watch it, and then every once in a while, kind of watch it again. It's
Okay.
not going to be a perfect one for one for as talented or as informative as you are. But yeah, if you spend enough time with it, it can get really close.
Any other questions?
Yep. We have a two-parter from Allison. First part is, what is Easton Utilities' strategy for governance of AI usage internally?
We have a AI policy, we have a business continuity policy, we have a cybersecurity policy, and AI is striped through all of that. To go into the specifics of it would take a long time, but essentially we tell our employees exactly what they should do, what they can't do, and from a cybersecurity standpoint, what information can be passed to it. And but there, like I was saying before, integrated AI is everywhere. It's in all the systems that we're using every day. So it has to be pretty generic and high level.
And that same Allison also asked, I also noticed that you did not mention Watson X by IBM for businesses. Have you tested their products?
Scott has an opinion on it.
Well, no, it's definitely it's more on the expensive end. So no, it's we've been really successful with between Claude and for coding internally between Claude and ChatGPT Codex or OpenAI Codex. They've served us and kept costs down. Say it that way.
Yeah, and the last thing I can say about that, IBM's offering is competitive and comparable to the rest of them, but IBM has a lot of legacy system issues that we try to stay away from. With
And just to kind of state a bias, my uncle worked for IBM at one point. It's where products go to die, is what he always used to tell me. So that's the reason why I kind of ignore it.
So that's
All
take
right.
it or leave it. That's our bias.
Yeah.
Okay. We have another question from Athena. What are your thoughts about how to protect one's home or corporate networks from exposure to potentially poisoned AI models that are trusted and may work in conjunction with things such as spam filters, IDS, IPS solutions that may be producing bad signatures or detections?
Data poisoning is an issue. Having your own, and actually we were going to talk about it a little bit, but we thought it was too technical. But yeah, feeding bad data into an AI model, just slightly bad data can throw it off. Having your own separate instance, and remember, if you have your own account, you're still getting fed trained data from the provider, and it's being updated periodically. So data poisoning can enter the equation, and it goes back to what Scott said. Do not trust everything that comes out of it.
And then someone said, can AI tools like Claude change my own existing files that I refer to analyze, or does it always start by creating something new that I can change myself?
Either. Yeah, it's how you query it. It's conversational. You have to be the querying and how you form your query is critical. And there's classes on just that.
Okay, and our last question is, why do you consider the paid versions more secure?
Because we're being told that they are.
Yeah, basically, you've signed, there's an agreement to all of them where if you have a business class, enterprise class, or what have you, that they promise that they will not train your data. And it's not so much that they're trying to steal your data, it's just, yes, as you go about utilizing it, they're training on whatever they see out on the internet and plus whatever you're kind of popping through it. But when you're using a business class, that's the promise. The promise
Yeah,
is whatever you place in is not supposed to be trained.
there's a contractual agreement, and I can't promise that they're not. I don't know what they're doing. I really can't say.
Nope.
Fair enough. Well, I think those were the end of the questions. Thank you both so very much for sharing your time with us today. We really appreciate it and appreciate Easton Utilities for helping support.
Anything we can do to help the community, just like you guys do, we love to help. So thank you
Thank you
for
for your time.
inviting us.
Great. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.